Okay, so let's go ahead, guys. SAC, what are the technical questions? Many of you might not have worked in SAC, but I will try to make it very simple so that everybody can understand. And people who have experience in SAC will relate to it better. What type of stories have you created in SAC? Can you give me a scenario of what you have worked? Right? In SAC also, they don't ask direct questions. They will ask scenario-based questions. So you can say one of these two scenarios. I have worked on both, so I mentioned both. But if you have worked on only one of them, you can mention accordingly. First scenario, worked on sales reporting scenario with BW query as background. Background means the source. BW query as source, I should say, not background. As source. So BW is an on-premise, and then that had a BW query, and that query was basically feeding into my model in SAC, and then based on that model, I created the story. What are the KPIs? Okay, I'll mention this. So live model based on the BW. Okay. If you don't have planning requirement, you can live with live model. The moment you have planning requirement in SAC, then you have to load the data, because for planning it is mandatory for you to load the data. Planning right now is not possible on a live model, or even if it's possible on BPC, there are very rare scenarios where it is still possible, but it has performance issues and it has limitations. So 99% of the time, planning if you are doing, then you have to load the data in the model. But in this case, I am not working on planning. In this particular scenario, there is no planning. So I have the BW query, that was my source. Based on the BW query, I created a live model in SAC. And based on that live model, I created a story, which was sales story. The main KPIs we were analyzing were sales quantity, the price, currency, gross sales in local currency, global currency, and net sales in local currency, global currency. Apart from those, there were some other supporting KPIs as well: returns, allowances, and discounts. Why you had the returns, allowances, discount? Because if you see this particular equation, the gross sales is 100,000 and net sales is 88,000. So the difference between gross sales and net sales is basically your returns, allowances, and discounts. So if you subtract returns, if you subtract allowances, if you subtract discounts, you will get your net sales. So that's why this was a formula. This was not a direct key figure. This was a calculated key figure in SAC. Okay. And then gross sales I was getting, returns I was getting, allowances I was getting, and discounts I was getting. And I was just doing net sales minus returns, minus allowances, minus discounts, and I was getting the net sales. So this is how you can explain a very valid customer scenario. And what are the dimensions you were using? Company code was there, material was there, plant was there, month granularity. It was not a day granularity, so this reporting was not at a day granularity, but at a month granularity. And then we had customer, material group, and region. So these were the ones. And then you will always have something called a version dimension also. Version. Usually version and date dimensions are mandatory in an SAC model. Okay. And then you will have account dimension also usually. But now with new model type, you don't have to have account dimension. You can just have pure measures as well. But usually version and date dimensions are mandatory. That's why in this, the date granularity is month. And for version, you can say that I always had actual public dot actual version. Because there was no planning, so by default, it will be only one version in the model, and that will be a public version, and that will be public dot actual. That's all. Very simple, but very valid customer scenario. Second scenario is more complicated. It has planning involved as well. So you can say that I have worked on the FP&A scenario. FP&A stands for financial planning and reporting. So within financial planning and reporting, there are usually three types of statement reportings: P&L, cash flow, and balance sheet. So I have just taken one of them, P&L, profit and loss, also known as income statement. So if somebody is saying income statement or if someone else is saying P&L, they are saying one and the same thing, basically. So I have done based on that. These were the KPIs. My revenue was there. My cost of goods sold, COGS was there. Gross profit was there. SG&A expenses were there. Operating income is there. Taxes were there. And finally, net income is there. Where are these coming from? Basically, if you look at the income statement for a company, this is how it will look like. You will have net sales, then you will have COGS. Net sales minus COGS is your gross profit. Then you will have SG&A. SG&A stands for selling, general, and administration. So SG&A will have your expenditure. These are all your expenses. Okay. Net sales is your revenue. Then you will have expenses. Expenses is COGS, your SG&A, and if you subtract COGS and SG&A, you will get your operating income. And once you have your operating income, then you will subtract your gains and losses and interest expense. So if you have taken a loan, if companies have taken a loan, they are paying interest to the bank, then an interest expense is subtracted, and then it is income before taxes. And then final deduction is the taxes, and after taxes, you get your net income. This is a profit and loss statement, also called income statement of a company. And if you have to report and plan on that, you will need all these. You will need net sales, you will need COGS. You don't need this because it's a formula, you can calculate it. You need SG&A expense, then again formula, you don't need, you can calculate it. You need other income, you need gain, you need the taxes, and then so all the bold highlighted ones, black ones, are formula. And the ones which are not highlighted, they are GL accounts. I repeat, they are GL accounts in S/4HANA FSV, Financial Statement Version Hierarchy. They are GL accounts. So you will have in dimensions, you now look at the KPIs. Okay, let's revise the KPIs before going to dimension. Revenue, what is revenue? Net sales. COGS is cost of sales. Gross profit is your formula, which is your net sales minus COGS. SG&A, selling and general expenses. Operating income, taxes, net income. So your company statement is basically driving these KPIs. And then dimensions, company code, profit center, cost center, GL account. The most important dimension in a P&L reporting and planning is your GL account, which is coming from S/4HANA. It will have a hierarchy, and in that hierarchy, you will get all these GL accounts under those nodes. Okay, and then you have posting date, and then you will create formula-based dimension members. Formula-based dimension members means your GL account will have certain members which will be formula. What are the formula? Gross profit is formula, operating expense is formula, operating income is formula, because you don't need actual value for this. You just need the components value, and then you can calculate these. So that's why they are called calculated dimension members. That means formula based dimension members. And then you will do your planning. So what is the scenario? The scenario is you will have the actuals coming from S/4HANA. So no BW for HANA here, okay? You will have your actuals coming from S/4HANA, and that actual will be based on a CDS view. You will load the data in the planning model. This is the planning model will look like. These are your KPIs, these are your dimensions. Then you will have input form. Input forms will be created by you, and you will be given to the planners. And then before they can enter the data, now what will they enter data for? They will enter data for these nodes and these GL accounts. So they will say that for my year 2025, I'm expecting this much will be my net sales, this much will be my cost of sales, this much will be my selling and general expenses, this much will be my operating income, so on and so forth. So they will enter the forecast for all these headers in an input form. Once they enter the data, it will go and sit in the model, planning model, and then you will run your data actions. That data action will basically copy the data from actual to plan first, and then actually, before they enter the data, you will have to run the data action, which will copy data from actual to plan, and then they get the numbers already as a copy of actuals. Then they manipulate that data. Once they manipulate the data, put it into the model, then your other data actions will run, and then finally your reporting will be done. I know it sounds complicated, guys. It is a little bit. If you don't know FP&A, if you are not aware of financial terminology, it will be a little complicated. So if you don't want to go there, stick with this simple one. But if you have worked and if you have an idea of FP&A, your finance, your GL accounts, your hierarchies, your FSVs, if you have an idea there, then this is the best scenario to tell what you have worked on. Okay. What types of model you have created? Just say reporting models and planning models both. And I have worked on both live model, which is used for reporting, and import data model, which is used for planning. So I have worked on both the type of models. There is no difference really. The only difference is that in the planning model, they can enter data. In the live model, they cannot enter the data, or the reporting model, they cannot enter the data. It's just only for read-only purpose. So you can load the data and then you can read. Do you know the difference between classic model and new model? Yes, this is very frequently asked. And which one will you prefer? So classic model will give you only one measure and account dimension, but the new model will give you multiple measures and also multiple accounts. So that's the main difference. The new model has better calculated measures interface. It has more ability for transformation, and you can also view dimension values from within the model. And preference, of course, will be given for new model because it gives you flexibility of account based also and multiple measures as well. So that's why the new model will be always preferred if possible. In which cases you would stick to the classic account-based model? So there are scenarios where you will stick to the classic account-based model. And what are those scenarios? You have an existing classic account-based model that cannot be migrated. Why it cannot be migrated? Because it has currency conversion enabled. If you have currency conversion enabled, the migration is not yet possible. Maybe in future they will make it, but it is currently not possible. And also you have data point comments. So if you have commenting functionality enabled, and if you have data point comments, you cannot migrate to the new model. So this is one of the examples where you have to stick to classic account model. And then if you are using a BPC import data connection, which is used for BPC integration, then also the new model doesn't support it yet. You have to stick to the classic account-based model. Have you worked on planning? Yes, we just discussed FP&A scenario. This is what I was talking about. Actual data loaded from S4 via CDS view. This is the CDS view GL balance cube. Public dimensions were populated from master data CDS view, including hierarchies. Specifically, I'm talking about GL hierarchies. GL account hierarchy gave the structure for P&L nodes and accounts under those nodes. Planning model had version dimension to differentiate between plan, actual, and budget. So you will use version dimension to differentiate between plan, actual, and budget. You will have audit trail dimension to track the source of data, pre-allocation data, allocation data, post-allocation data, S4 data, or is it a calculation happening to data actions? So you can differentiate between these using a audit trail dimension. So then you will copy the actuals to plan data via the data action. Input forms will be created for users to adjust or forecast the data for plan for all the different nodes, revenue, expenses, SG&A, all these nodes which I showed you. Once they have done that, then allocation data actions will run, which will move data from one cost center to multiple cost centers. Reports finally will be created to show actual versus plan and variance. And finally, data can also be written back to S4. Once the planning is done, data can be written back to S4 using the OData control. Okay, we are way over time. I think it's 1:30 right now. Okay, let me take a poll here. Do you guys want to stop right now? And we will continue next week. I can have a next week session, a follow-up session also. Or are you guys okay to continue?
Okay, sir. Continue, please.
Yeah, we can continue, sir.
Yeah, I think okay to continue.
Oh, wow. I'm impressed, guys. Anyone sitting for 2 hours would be really bored. Thank you so much. So I will continue, but I'll try to be fast, and then we'll open for Q&A. Okay. Next question in SAC. Have you worked on advanced formulas in SAC? Can you give me a scenario where you have used it? Yes, very common. Advanced formulas are nothing but your, if in the old planning world, if I have to compare, advanced formula are nothing but planning functions. Planning functions are now converted into data actions. So data action in SAC is equal to planning function in BPC or in BWIP. Both of them had planning function concept. Same planning function concept has been translated as a data action. So data action has something called advanced formula step. In data action, you have simple steps and also complex advanced formula steps. So this is what usually the interviewer is interested in. So you should say, yes, I have worked on advanced formula, and this is what is the scenario. What is the scenario? Copy the actuals to plan. That's all. A very simple scenario. See, this is a very simple 24 lines of code, a very simple advanced formula. Let me make it slightly bigger. Now, see what is happening in this. Very, very simple language to understand. This is / is your comments. So this is not an actual code. This is basically member set and config. If anything is starting with config and member set, that is basically setting the scope of your calculation. Scope means filters. What data you want the calculation to happen to. So if I have config.hierarchy, meaning I have to include hierarchy number 2 from company code, hierarchy number 2 from cost center, hierarchy number 2 from profit center. So only take these 3 hierarchies into consideration when any calculation is happening. Member set means filters. So audit trail should be equal to all audit trails from this hierarchy of audit trail. So the value all audit trail, whatever audit trail data, whatever data is under this particular node of the audit trail hierarchy, take that into consideration. Date should be between my first actual and last actual from version dimension. So pink means dimension and yellow means property. So dimension dot property, that is the format. So date should be between first actual and last actual. Again, comments, / is comments, so we can ignore that. Again, member set means filter. The GL account should be filtered to FPA 108, BS is balance sheet, CF is cash flow, volume, standard unit, FT all. So wherever the GL account values are this or this or this or this or this or these, then filter only for those GL accounts. So all that is happening till line number 15 is setting the scope, setting the filters on which the actual calculation will happen. Nothing is happening here. No calculation is happening. Just we are setting the filters that these only on this data perform the action. Now, starting from line number 16 is blank, so we can ignore that. 17, 18 again, / means this is comment. Line 19 blank. Line 20th. Now the actual code starts. If the audit trail value is alloc underscore data, that means this allocation, then the data, that means this is my model. So put in my model, what should I put? I should put all the data which is there in actual version. So look up my model. Result lookup means look up in my planning model. Look up in my planning model. Which data should I look up? All the data which has the public.actual version, and put it in all the data where audit trail is alloc underscore data. This is how you will read. This is how it is written. So left side is actually the target and right side is the source. Please remember that. Left side is the target where you are writing the data. Right side is the source from where you are fetching the data. So I am fetching the actual data from my model, result lookup means from the model, and putting it into the data where my audit trail is alloc data. If it is not alloc data, then what I have to do? Then I will put, let's read from right to left. Okay, right. When you read from right to left, it is more meaningful. Fetch all the data from the actual version from my model and put it in rest of the data set where the audit trail is SAC. So if my audit trail is alloc data, put the actual and blindly copy it into all my data, because there is no filter inside the data. If it is not alloc data, then take the same data. So they are fetching the same data, actual data, but where they are putting is based on the if condition. So if it is alloc data audit trail, then put it in all the data, copy it to all the data. Don't filter it for any audit trails. But if it is not, then you only put the actual data in the SAC audit trail data. That's all. So basically they are copying the actual to plan. That is what is the main purpose of this data action. And then end if and then end. That's it. So this is a very simple example of advanced formula where you are copying the actual data, version equals to actual, into the planned data. Now planned data is sitting either in alloc data or SAC. Okay. So based on if and else condition, you are doing it. Next, tell me a scenario where you face the technical challenge and how you overcome it in SAC. So very simple scenario. We had a scenario where we had to remove a dimension, owner dimension, from the model. So model had one dimension, I had to remove it and make it a property of a public dimension. So I had a public dimension mat plan. I had to now make it as a property instead of a direct dimension in the model. Now it will be sitting as a property of a public dimension, and I will remove it from my model. So this was a challenge. This was a very challenging scenario. So to resolve that, we removed it from the model. So when we remove it, data will be automatically aggregated for the remaining dimensions. So we could manage the data in model because it automatically aggregated the data, and that was okay. No problem there. We modified the stories where the owner was there as a direct dimension. We removed that and replaced that with the public dimension property. So we handled that with the property of public dimension. Okay, no problem there. But the challenge we faced was data actions. There were data actions where this owner dimension was directly used in the prompts. And because now you have removed it from the model, data action will be broken because there is no owner dimension anymore in the model. So what will you do? You would expect that the data action will now allow you to choose a property of a dimension, but it won't. That is a limitation with the prompts of a data action. The prompt of a data action will not allow you to use a property of a dimension. It will allow you to use a dimension directly, no problem. But if you have a property now, it will not allow you to use the property as a prompt filter. So then what will you do? So we had to get creative in this scenario. And how we handle this? We handled this by creating a hierarchy. Hierarchy on what? On mat plan. So we created a level-based hierarchy. There are two types of hierarchies in SAC: child, parent-child, and level. So we created a level-based hierarchy on mat plan where my owner is the top level now and mat plan is the next level. So there are two levels. Top level is owner, then next level is mat plan. The moment you create a hierarchy on the dimension, and this dimension has to be there in the model, of course. So the moment you create a hierarchy on the dimension, now the prompt, the data action prompt will allow you to use the hierarchy. It doesn't allow you to use a property directly, but now it will allow you to use hierarchy, and in the code, you can refer to that hierarchy by base member function. Member set means filter, as I told you. So I'm filtering my MAT plan based on the hierarchy now. And hierarchy is my MAT plan owner, the level. Which level I'm choosing the owner as the level. So for an end user, the functionality didn't change. Previously, he or she was used to give owner in the prompt. Now also they will give owner in the prompt. And based on the owner, the MAT plans will be filtered out as per the hierarchy, and that will be applied as a filter. And what function I use to access the hierarchy? Base member. Base member is usually used to access the hierarchy nodes of the hierarchy. So very challenging. We didn't know what to do because it was a limitation for data action. So we had to get creative. We created a hierarchy based on MAT plan. Owner was the top level, and then we used the base member function to access the hierarchy and filter with owner. So this is a scenario which is a very valid scenario. I faced it myself, and that's what I have given it here. When do you use a data action versus multi-action? Data action is nothing but planning function, as I told you. If you want to create a set of actions, if you want to perform a set of activities, you create a data action. And if you want to perform a set of data actions in sequence, it's just like a process chain. So multi-action is your process chain, and individual sub-chain inside a process chain is your data action. So data action will do a specific set of steps, and multiple data actions if you need, then you have to go for multi-action. And you can schedule the multi-action through calendar functionalities in SAC. And the last one is VDT, value driver trees in SAC. Where did you use it? Have you used it? If you have used it, say yes. If you have not used it, say I know the concept. I have not worked on it actually, but I know the concept. The concept is that value driver tree is used for a what if analysis in SAC. So it will be based on a model. So you have to provide a model first. And then once you provide the model, the value driver tree will automatically be created based on all the accounts you have. And going back to the income statement example, right? You have all these nodes here. So you have the operating income, net revenue, you have all the expenses, SG&A, deduction expenses, payroll expenses, travel expenses. So all these are rolling up to net income, operating income. And then with value driver tree, what you can do is you change a particular value. Say, for example, I change my office expense. How will it affect the employee expense? How will that affect the operating expense? And how eventually it will impact the operating income? You can visualize all that in a value driver tree. So value driver tree is nothing but what if I change this? What is the impact on my higher level node in the hierarchy? That is value driver tree. And one more question, and then we go to Hana has also okay. And then we have behavior. Okay, let's at least try to complete the SAC part. So what are inverse formulas in SAC? Again, a very tricky and very valid question, frequently used. I have got this question a couple of times. What are inverse formula in SAC and where did you use them? So inverse formula, you have to understand, is basically to enable planning on calculated measure. Simple word, please keep in mind. To enable planning on calculated measure, inverse formulas are used. How? Let's see with an example. So here you have a total employee. Here you have active employee. Here you have inactive employee. Total employee is equal to active plus inactive. 31 plus 39 equals to 70. This is grayed out, as you can see. In the table also, this is grayed out. These are not grayed out. Why? Because this is a formula. So in SAC, I have created a calculated measure, and this calculated measure is active plus inactive. So now when I'm doing planning, I can enter data here. But I cannot enter data here. Why? Because this is not a direct measure. This is a calculated measure. And SAC by default will not allow you to enter data for a calculated measure. But sometimes clients, they have a requirement that I should be able to enter data here and here, but also here. Then what will you do? Then inverse formulas will come into picture. So now you will write an inverse formula like this: active plus inactive, pipe symbol or bar symbol, whatever you want to call it, inverse active equals to total employee minus inactive. Again, so active plus inactive was original. Employee equals to active plus inactive. That will stay. That's fine. Now you are adding an additional line of code here which says pipe symbol inverse active is equal to total minus inactive. This is called inverse formula. The moment you do that, what will happen? Now this will not be grayed out. The total employee will not be grayed out. Now you can enter data. So now what I did, from 70 previously, I made it 61. So which will change? Active will change or inactive will change? Active will change. Why? Because in the inverse, I have given permission to modify active. And what should be active? Total minus inactive. So inactive will not change because I have not permitted inactive to be changed. I have only permitted active to be changed. So now if I change employee total from 70 to 61, it will be 61 minus 39, which will be 22. That's what I have given. Total minus inactive equals to active. So by putting the inverse formula, I did two things. First, now I can do planning on a calculated measure. That means I can enter data on a calculated measure, and which component it will impact will be defined here. So it will impact this, but it will not impact this. So this is what is a functionality of inverse formula, to enable planning on a calculated measure. Okay. So with that, we come to an end for SAC technical questions. I'll open the forum for a few minutes. Please go ahead, guys, if you have any questions.
Yeah, Dipanshu, you have shown something about VDT for what if analysis.
Yes.
Suppose if anything is changed in operating expense, it will also, if anything is changed in office expense, it will have impact on operating income. This is the what if analysis what users want to do. So in this case, the users should have something to input in office expense. So that will be given, is it? Or
yes. So when it is on a planning model, this node, the moment you will click on this node, it will give you a bar, and that bar is slidable bar. So you can increase this value, decrease this value, and the moment you say save, then this will become yellow, this will become yellow, this will become yellow, this will become yellow. So it will show you all the impacted areas in yellow. So these are all input enabled nodes in value driver tree. So you can enter an actual value, like I want to increase from 23 to 40 million, and these are in millions, by the way, 23 million to 40 million. Or you can say I want to increase 10%. So you can give percent also, plus 10% if you type and then hit enter, then this will increase 10%. It will have an impact here. It will show here how much it increased, and how much the operating income increased.
okay. And my second question is, what is the difference between SAC planning, IBP and BPC?
Okay, good question. SAC planning is a general term. SAC planning can have your sales planning. SAC planning can have FP&A planning. SAC planning can have headcount planning. SAC can have cost center planning, profit center planning, product cost planning. So SAC planning can have multiple types of planning. Okay, it's not restricted to only sales or only FP&A or only product costing or only cost center accounting or only profit center accounting. No, you can have multiple planning scenarios in SAC. IBP is only used for supply chain planning. demand planning, APO. So previously it was called APO, analysis no, I think APO, I forgot the full form of APO, but APO basically is for supply chain planning. And what comes under supply chain? DP, demand planning, SNP, supply network planning, and PPDS, production planning. So for your specific DP, SNP, and PPDS, you have IBP as the next version of APO. IBP is the cloud version of APO. APO was on-premise, and IBP, integrated business plan, is the cloud version. But SAC can have multiple types of planning. So it is not restricted to only one. That is the difference between SAC planning and IBP. BPC is for financial planning, like your FP&A, business planning and consolidation. It is usually used for FP&A only. That's what I have seen. I have not seen BPC for headcount planning or product cost planning. BPC, what I have seen is for FP&A only. But SAC is basically the parent of all. It can have headcount. It can headcount planning, FP&A planning, product cost planning, cost center planning, and a lot more. So that's basically the difference. And gradually, BPC will merge into SAC. Gradually, not yet, but BPC is still there as an on-premise planning solution. SAC is the cloud version, and IBP is specifically geared towards supply chain.
Okay, thank you.
So, Dipanshu, one question.
Yes.
Regarding the SSC, right? In BPC, the consolidation is there, right? So that is also any plan for in SSC?
Oh, that's a good question. 2 years back, SAC didn't have consolidation. Now, SAC has group reporting functionality and consolidation functionality enabled. So in SAC, you can do group reporting where your data comes from AC.U. So that is the main table in S4HANA. And then group reporting can be very easily now done in SAC. It's possible.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Dipanshu, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Normally, for the coding point of view, we are skipping the analytic designer. So what is your experience, especially in the interviews? The interviews are going for the analytic designer. I mean, they are asking the questions about the analytic designer. And what is your input that the companies are normally using for analytic designer, or they required the persons for the analytic designer?
Very, very valid question. And yes, the answer is yes. Companies are expecting you to know a little bit of JavaScript. It's basically not JavaScript. Analytics designer is written in a sub language of JavaScript called TypeScript. The exact name of the language which is used in analytics designer scripting is called TypeScript. It's a subset of JavaScript. Motivation is from JavaScript, but slight enhancements and changes are done, and now SAP is terming it as TypeScript. So yes, the companies are asking you, do you have experience? Like recent interview which I took for one of the clients here in Canada, they asked me, have you worked on analytics designer and scripting there? Do you know JavaScript? So my answer was, I have not worked on a project. Again, I never say no. I never say blind no. And that's probably my habit as a contractor. So what I have told is that I don't have an end-to-end project experience on analytics designer, but I have a basic knowledge of JavaScript, and I know that TypeScript is the language. I have a small POC which I did, which was basically unified story. So now you know that in SAC we have unified stories. Analytics designer is no longer a separate component anymore. It used to be previously in SAC versions, but now with unified stories, scripting is part of the story itself. So the moment you click on that advanced option in the story, your scripting will become enabled. And you can write your small scripts or big scripts there in the story itself. You don't have to separately go for analytics designer. So I have played around with that, and I know a little bit of JavaScript. I can easily pick it up, not a big deal. but I don't have any project end-to-end experience. That's my answer. But the companies are asking for that as well.
Thank you very much, Divanshu. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, guys, it's almost 2 o'clock. Do you still want to continue, or should we have a follow-up session? Because I still have a lot to cover for HANA, native HANA, and then we have behavioral questions as well, and then we stop.
Please continue, Devanshu. HANA is more important.
Hats off to you guys. Hats off. Seriously, it's been 2 o'clock. Wow, we started at 11:30. It's 2.5 hours. So,
yeah,
are you guys sure?
Yeah, you are telling the live scenarios and who will share, Devanshu. It's really nice of you. If you have patience and you can tell us, please continue.
No, I have patience, but aren't you guys running out of your patience?
No, we're ready.
We can continue next week, Devanshu.
Yeah, see, I told you. I mean, come on, people, it's Sunday, so it's late for India also. So let's do this. I will stop the recording here. I will have 1 or 2 questions more. Let's stop the content here. I will have a follow-up session next week. Same Sunday we are going to have, or if any other day, I'm going to post on LinkedIn. We are going to cover technical live scenarios of HANA, plus behavioral questions, plus your Q&A. Finally, your Q&A. Because if I continue, it's going to take another 1.5 hour. And in India, it is very, very late. I know a lot of people are logging in from India as well. So I have to respect their time zone. So that's why let's stop the content and let's open the forum for a few more questions, and then we'll stop for today.
Hi Devanshu, I have one question. It is related to the optimization thing. So I faced one question in an interview, like the stories are delivered and everything is running fine, but the client is complaining like the stories are taking longer time to load. So like the question was imposed, like how can we optimize the story?
Okay, so basically performance optimization, but at an SAC story level.
Yes.
Okay, so the first point what you should do for checking that performance issue is that on a live model or is it on an import data model? Are you storing the data in SAC in the model, or is it live happening? Because the performance issues are seen mostly in live stories based on live models. If the data goes higher and higher, then your live model starts giving issues. So that's my first point. You have to check and see if you can convert that into a import data model. The moment you start storing the data in SAC, then your performance will shoot up many times higher compared to the live model. That is first. Second, are you using analytics designer or scripting a lot in your stories? What I have seen is in your charts, in your widgets, all the widgets you are using, if you are high on scripting and it is highly customized, those scripting will take time to render and the stories will take many seconds to actually show you the data. So stop heavy scripting. Recently, like a year back, I got a project, a US client was there, and they had first implementation with all out on analytics designer. Everything was customized. The company, the consulting company who implemented that, they screwed up. Basically, they convinced the client that it is heavily on, we can go heavily on analytics designer, on scripting, and every requirement will be met. Basically, they said yes to everything the client asked. And how did they make sure that they implemented analytics designer? Because when you code, anything is possible, right? So they didn't want to say no to unreasonable requests, which you should say no. So we got so they screwed up, they were kicked out. Then the client recruited us and we were given the task of optimizing the performance. What we saw was every story was full of scripting and customizations. So we took that project, we converted all that scripting into data actions, advanced formulas, what I showed you. So if you write an advanced formula compared to a scripting in Analytics Designer, these formulas, and if you convert it into calculated measure, or if you want to convert into the account dimension, which are calculated account dimensions, it performed way better. What previously used to take 2 minutes to render, now it was taking 2.5 seconds to render when we converted everything into advanced formulas and member formulas. So stop scripting a lot. Yes, minor scripting you can use, no problem there. But the moment you start putting scripting in every chart, every widget on SAC, you will start having problems. Live model, try to convert it into import data model if there's a performance issue. Hierarchies. If you have hierarchies which have more than 200, 300, 500 nodes and multiple GL accounts or multiple members inside that, it will create an issue. So try to have only limited nodes of the hierarchy, have a top level or a highly granular report, and have a second report which is granular. Don't try to combine every granularity down to the GL account, down to the document level in one story. Don't do that. That will have performance issues. So some pointers for you.
Yep. Thank you.
Story filters. Put more story filters as much as possible. Put more input controls as much as possible. Don't do unbooked data. Yes, another one. Sorry, I forgot about this. So when you put your filters in input controls or page filters or story filters, we forgot to remove the unbooked data. When you have unbooked data, the data will multiply many folds, and that will have performance issues. So remember to uncheck the unbooked data both in the input controls and also in the regular filters. So only deal with booked data. Yeah, Chandan, you have a hand.
Yeah, hello Devanshu. Hi. So Devanshu, basically we are exploring in my PhD side, we are exploring in SAC side. So one of the quick questions come because we have an on-premises server, and the question come if we are doing sort of planning in SAC, that
Yes.
plan is having write back functionality in the on-premises ADSO, planning ADSO.
Yes.
Can we have?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I told you, right? This was one of the scenarios. So when I discussed what is the planning scenario you have worked on, the last point was data was written back to S4. It can also be BW4. Either it can be S4 or it can be BW4, both. And the way you will write it back is using the OData Cloud Integration Adapter. So you'll have to create a remote source in your HANA database. That remote source will have the OData Cloud Integration Adapter. And once the remote source is created, you'll have to create virtual tables. And the main virtual table will be fact_data. This is the main virtual table which you will get from the SAC model. So planning model, when it is written back, it gives you fact_data as the main virtual table. And from the fact_data, you can write it back to an ADSO. So what will you do? What are the steps? The steps is first you have to create a remote source based on OData Cloud Integration Adapter.
Okay.
Next step, what will you do? You will create virtual table based on fact_data table from SAC. SAC will give you, this is a default by the way, in every SAC tenant, you will get fact data for the model. Then what will you do? Your virtual table is created. Then you will create a, let me think. So now you have multiple options. Now that you have virtual table created, you can write the data into a staging table. That's possible. Or what you can do is you can create a BW data source. So data source type will be HANA SDA, and you will use this particular virtual table what you created as your source for BW data source based on the virtual table. Then you will have create ADSO based on the data source and load the data. And then
this can be in the existing planning also. We can if already planning.
Oh yeah, absolutely, because you are not touching that planning side. All you are doing is you are creating a remote source in your HANA database of BW. You are creating a virtual table in the BW's HANA database. You are creating BW data source in ABAP layer of BW, and you're creating ADSO. So you are not touching or you're not hampering or impacting anything on the planning side. Planning can be active, planning can be live. All this has to be done on the BW HANA database side.
Okay. Yeah. And I have one more question related to more on the story side. Like
Yes.
if you have to create a custom dimension where, for example, if you have an account custom dimension using account or PC combination of 2 or 3 dimension, if you want to create a customized dimension within a hierarchy structure, so can we play around or with the normal scripting or normal formula, those things with the playing in the dimension, not the measure? Because in BO we are doing, but in SAC, can we play around?
I didn't get your question. Can you please elaborate a little bit?
For example, here you are showing in your story, one of the story you are showing like the balance sheet, right? So
Yes.
this column you are showing the balance sheet. So
Yes.
in
Not
in
balance
that,
sheet, income statement.
yeah, this income statement. Yeah,
Yes.
in P&L income statement.
Yes.
So these are the net sales and cost centers. So sometimes we have some cases where they use instead of only account, they below net sales they want to add operating segment or some profit center as it's like a customized structure of layout.
Yeah,
in the one layout.
absolutely. Those are called custom nodes for your GL account hierarchy, right? So what you have to do is you have to create a member of the GL account and assign that to the correct hierarchy position in the hierarchy, and then you can play around with that.
I have one question. In SAC planning, this one, in support project, what are the
Yes.
activities involved in a SAC planning?
In support project. Okay. So in a support project, what you have to make sure is that enhancements will be requested. So say for example, you have your planning model in SAC. That planning model is getting data from a BW query. Example, right? It can also get data from S4 CDS view. But in this scenario, I'm talking about where I worked on a support project. So the scenario was that there's a BW query and it was feeding to SAC planning model. And then input forms were there, and then the stories, reporting stories were there, and then data actions, multi-actions were there. So 2 types of enhancement requests will come in support project. First, we need additional property of a dimension. So there's a public dimension, and say for example cost center, public dimension. In that cost center, we have property ABC. Property is nothing but your navigation attributes. In BW terminology, if I have to compare, dimension property is nothing but your navigation attributes. So they will say cost center has ABC, but now we are adding 2 more property to this dimension, and we want to load the data from BW. So what you have to do? You have to enhance the master data query, the query which is not the transaction data query. There's a separate query for transaction data. There will be a separate query for master data. So master data query has to be enhanced. So you will go in the query in BW, you will add those new fields. Then the load job, there will be import job in SAC planning, which will feed the data into the public dimensions. So you will refresh the job, edit the job, make sure the 2 properties are included in the job, and then run the job and say to the SAC guys that okay, it is ready. Now it is available in the public dimension, and then now you tell me what's next. Then they will say, okay, so you have added to the public dimension, great. Now please add it to the stories. We want the stories also to have these. So you will ask, okay, do you want as an input control or as a page filter, or what do you want this property to be? So they will say, no, put it as a page filter and give us an option for page filter. Then you will go to all the stories which are based on the planning model to add those 2 additional dimension properties into the stories. So enhancement in the stories as well. If there is a data action which has to take into consideration these 2 additional properties, then you'll have to use that in the data action. So you will modify the data actions also. So these are certain activities for a support project. Enhancements, basically. New user added. Okay, there is a new guy who has joined the company. So now you have to add that user, right, to SAC. The admins will do that. Then if you are involved in authorization, so in SAC we have teams. So the respective team has to be enhanced, and that user has to be added to the team. And then a respective data access control. If DAC is enabled on your planning model, then you have to make sure that the user is added to the DAC, and the read write option, his email ID or her email ID has to be added to the read write properties of the DAC dimension. So that is another activity for support.
Devanshu, this is Kishore again.
Yes,
I have one quick question on just earlier, you were saying to improve the performance, you just added the advanced formulas in the in a SAC, or is it on the model base? Just where did you add those formulas? And yeah, these are the formulas.
So these are data action. This is a code inside a data action. So what they were doing in the scripting coding, we converted that as a data action. So where you create data action, so the data action is created separately in SAC. So when you go to SAC, on the left hand side in the menu, you will get an option called data actions. So you will create a data action based on a particular model. So when you create a data action, it will ask you which model you want to put the data action on. You will give a default model. Then it will ask you, okay, model we got, now which dimensions you want to put the prompts in. Then you will create the prompts, and then you will write the code. And then once the data action is ready, you will go to the story and you will add a button. There is something called a data action trigger. Okay. So you will add that as a button, and that button will, when the user will press the button, or the planning administrator will press the button, all this will happen. The model will be updated, and the reports will show the updated data.
Okay.
So what we did was, what was happening in real time is now happening prior to users accessing the report.
Right.
That's what we did.
But okay, all this is see, this is some kind of data action.
Yes.
It is taking place within SAC. SAC is your front end.
Oh yeah, everything is happening within SAC.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. My question is to improve the performance, because okay, these action activities can't we push down to just where the model is going to be, because otherwise it is going to be on the runtime, right? During the runtime.
No. That's what I'm trying to explain. This is not happening at runtime. So previously with Analytics Designer, it was happening at runtime. Okay. Data actions are not runtime. So what the process? So they had to change the process a little bit. So every morning when they log in at 8 o'clock EST time zone, of course I'm talking about here. When they log in, before that there is a calendar event which is happening every morning, and that calendar event is triggering a multi-action. That multi-action is triggering 10 to 12 data actions, and that data action is manipulating the data, storing it into the model as ready to use. And then once the 8 o'clock user is coming online, he or she is just executing the report, which is already having these calculations done and stored in the model. Nothing is happening real time then. They are just getting the data from the model and showing in the report. That's it.
So these data actions to be pushed down to the model, or my thing is just okay. I'm sorry, if I am really getting confused.
No, that's okay.
No, SAC is completely the front end. I am assuming that okay. The model you are bringing from the back end, somewhere is in the HANA database.
No. In this case, model is storing data in SAC.
Already you imported that data. That is a
yes. Data is imported. Oh. Okay. And calculations are also done via the data actions, and the calculated values are also stored back in the model. So when the user is coming, They are just seeing the values. Nothing is happening in real time when they're executing the report. Everything is already done, calculated, stored in the SAC model, and just presented in the stories. That's all.
Okay. Earlier, we do have the same concept. Like we also do have a concept, same thing in the BW, like pre-calculated key figures, right?
Exactly. Yes, pre-calculated key figures. But pre-calculation was happening in real time there, right?
No.
No? Okay. Then it's the same concept. So pre-calculated key figures are happening through data actions and stored in back to the data model under a particular account, and then user will come and just see the data which is stored in the model. Nothing is happening in real time.
Almost is a pre-cooked, ready to deliver.
Pre-cooked ready, exactly. So imagine the speed increase. Previously, all this was happening in real time. Okay, but now it is pre-cooked, so it is 100 times faster.
Yep.
Yes, Nandini, you have a hand raised. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, Divanshu. I'm a big fan of you, Divanshu. I watch.
Thank you. I'm a fan of you guys, actually. I mean, you look at that. It's more than 2.5 hours, and you guys are still here. Hats off.
So my question is, Divanshu, I have attended one interview. So in SAC planning side, so interviewer was asking, so have you ever worked on security side? So what is the answer for that, Divanshu? But I didn't work on security side. I said no, I didn't have
Again, see, never say I have not worked as a blind answer. Never. At least from my point of view, you should not say that. Then there is no point in the interview. Then interview will say that, okay, they have not worked, then let me go to the next candidate. So what you have to say, again, be smart. Okay, you don't have to lie, but you have to be a little smart. So what you will say is, you will say that security concept, I have not worked in a real project, but I'm aware of the concepts. I know how it works. There is something called a DAC, Data Access Control, in SAC. And in that DAC, we just gave the read and write functionalities to different users based on the dimension. So if the dimension is based on my sales organization, then in the sales organization, I will enable DAC. And the moment I enable DAC, two properties will come in. Read and write, and we'll just give the name. So that's, I have the knowledge, but I have not worked in real time. See, security, you have to at least know a little bit. You can't be absolutely blind. That's why I'm saying before the interview, this is a part of the preparation. So you know that they're going to ask about SAC, do your homework, read about DAC a little bit. You don't have to go a lot detail. Just know what is DAC, how it is enabled, and what are different teams. So there's something called teams. You first assign the user to teams, and then if you need analysis type of authorization, which is like granular authorization, then you just activate DAC. That's it. You just have to say this. You don't have to say that I have project experience and I have done end-to-end project, but just do your homework a little bit and say that I have knowledge on it.
Okay, thank you, Divanshu.
Sure. Priyanka, you have a hand raised.
Hi Devansha, I have a query here.
Yes.
While writing the data from SAC back to the BW ADSO,
Yes.
is there any specific setting like do we need to select only these type of ADSOs, or there are different types of ADSOs and write interface enabled one property is there, right? Do we need to enable that property? Is there any specifications while writing data back?
I don't think the write interface enabled is required. But I would recommend you to use either standard ADSO. I think standard ADSO is best. So go for standard ADSO.
Is it possible for direct update ADSO or possible to use?
I have not used direct update ADSO, so I have to test that out. Probably it is possible. I have not tested it out. But what I have in my project, what we have done is, it's a standard ADSO with changelog enabled. So changelog is now optional, right? So you have to specifically say changelog is enabled or not. So it's it's a standard ADSO with changelog enabled, so that even if the data which is coming from my SAC planning model, if it is not giving me deltas, what we have done is, delta didn't work, by the way, for us. We had to do full. So every time we are loading full in our ADSO. That's why I have kept the option as standard ADSO. It is overriding the data. and it is producing delta in change log, and to further targets, if you want to send, the change log will send it. So that's why I would prefer standard ADSO, but write update ADSO, not sure. We have to test it out.
And one more question. In order to consume S4 and objects like CDS views into SAC, do we need to write the annotation OData.publish true? Is it mandatory?
Good question. No, OData.publish true is not mandatory, but analytics.query equals to true is mandatory. Okay. So what you have to do is you have to enable an annotation called analytics.query:true. So that will expose that as a OLAP query, and then that will start becoming visible on the SAC side, and then you can use that for your stories. OData.publish true is probably not required, because OData.publish true is only required when you are using the CDS view via the OData framework. It is possible in both ways. OData also it's possible through OData, or direct CDS view with query true annotation is also possible. Both ways are possible. But OData publish is not mandatory for it to be visible in SAC. Analytics query true is mandatory.
I have one more question. In a composite provider, we can use calculation view as well, right? If it has input parameters and variables, how can we do mapping to the BEX query?
Okay, so variables not possible. Input parameters possible. So with input parameters, what you have to do is when you do the mapping in composite provider, the input parameter will be shown specifically in the mapping, and you can just map it to the target. And for the BEX query, not BEX now, BW query. For BW query, you can create a prompt based on that. So that's possible. Input parameter is supported. Variables, as far as I know, are not supported. See, I have worked till BW for HANA 2021. I have not worked in 2023. So latest one I am not sure, but till 2021, variables are not supported. So you have to convert the variables to input parameters if you want to use it in composite provider. But input parameters are readily supported.
So you mean to say we can create the variables, and we can use these input parameters as a reference characteristics, or how can we do mapping these input parameters to the variables, BEX variables, BW query variables?
No, so that mapping has to be done in the composite provider itself. So in the composite provider, when you map a calculation view, when you put a calculation view as a source, then there are 3 tabs to composite providers, right? So in the mapping tab, you will see the input parameter listed there on the left hand side, which you have to bring to a right hand side. You have to do the mapping in composite provider, and once you put it in the right hand side, I have shown this in my training as well, by the way. So I can send you some screenshots if you want how it is done. So when you map it to the right hand side, the composite provider output will have that, and then you will have to provide the value. If you are looking at the composite provider data preview, you will have to provide the value, and then when you create a BW query on top of composite provider, it is available to map it for the prompt. So it will automatically be there as a prompt for a BW query.
It will be automatically visible on the selection screen.
Yes.
If possible, can you send the screenshots?
Are you have you taken my course by any chance?
No.
Okay, then I'll send you the screenshot. Yeah, because people who have taken my course, I have shown that on the system itself. But for you, do me a favor, put your email ID in the chat, and just mention that you need the input parameter mapping in the composite provider, so that I will remember that I have to send it to you.
Okay, sure. Thanks.
No problem.
Devanshu, I don't pass too much time on this one. I just have a really quick question. When she's talking about those regarding the filters, like input parameters, right?
Yes.
So you're almost dealing with your OLAP filters transferring to your DB filters. We had some issues a long time back. I'm not sure if it is the same situation again now. Is the filters are going to be pushed down to the database level, or still only to the OLAP engine level only?
The filters will be pushed down to database level. So in HANA SP5 onwards, the filter push down issue, what you are mentioning about, it was a known issue and it was not being pushed down. It was coming, all the data was coming to the ABAP layer and
database to OLAP layer, then it is applying the filters.
Yes. So they have, previously it was resolved with some DB hints, but now they have given the option in SP5 onwards. SP7 now has it by default. It is pushed down now.
Okay.
Yes.
So is the DWC and DataSphere both are same, Devanshu?
Same. So they changed the name, that's all. And I'll tell you why they changed the name. SAP is anyways notorious in changing names so frequently.
Yeah.
The reason they changed the name is DataSphere is now not just data warehouse. It is much more than data warehouse. Now it has AI enabled in that, machine learning enabled in that. The integration tools are enabled in that. So it is much more than just a data warehouse. That's why they said data warehouse cloud only signifies that it is a data warehouse. It is not. It is more than that. So let's call it DataSphere. So the latest version when they released, they changed the name to DataSphere.
Okay. Is it on March 2023 or was it DWC is way before the concept?
No, I mean DataSphere. I think name change happened in recently only a year back. I think.
Oh, March,
I don't remember the exact date, but I think in 2023 sometime or 2022 they changed the name.
But when it was the DWCs got introduced, is it in 2022 or
you mean to say when DWC came into picture?
Yeah.
DWC was launched, if I am not wrong, and keep me honest here, guys, 2020, if I am not wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Now it looks like almost a one-stop go, Devanshu. In the DataSphere, he introduced BODS concepts and extraction process, whatnot. With the bridge, you can also migrate your existing
BW bridge. Correct.
Bridge and everything.
But SAC is still separate, so you still need a separate license for SAC if you want to use planning and all those things.
Right. Yes. Thanks, Devanshu.
Sure. Thank you. Good question, though. Okay, guys, I can take one more last question and then we'll stop. No more questions?
Hi.
Yeah, hi Dipanshu.
Hi, hello. Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah. So do we have any specific reason that right now planning can be done only by ingesting the data? Because I can't see anything where we have a live scenario with planning. And most of the cloud solution right now, they are doing planning by ingesting a file, let's say in GCP also.
Mm-hmm.
So any specific reason that SAP is still, because I know again we are just duplicating the data, maybe from S4 or from BW. Again, same data I'm loading back to the SAC, right? So again, it's a waste of memory or something, right? So what is a reason behind that?
Two reasons. Reason number one, planning is never done at an actual level. Your actual will be at a posting date level or a calendar day level. Planning is not done at a day level. The lowest granularity planning has is month or a period, fiscal period or calendar month. So when you load data in a planning model, it is at an aggregated level. Okay. 99% of the time. Sometimes there are some exceptional scenarios where planning is happening at a day level, which is very, very rare. Doesn't happen. So I'm going to talk about 99% only. Planning is always at a month or higher level, either month or quarter or year, but the lowest granularity is month. That is first difference between the actual data. Second reason the planning needs data to be loaded is because disaggregation happens in planning. Disaggregation means, say for example, I am planning at a company code and month level. That has to be disaggregated to all my plants under that company code. That disaggregation happens through the input forms. When you create that input forms where the users enter data, behind the scenes, if the users enter data at a company code level, it is being distributed between all the plants which are under the company code. Or if they are entering data at a quarter level, it is being distributed in all the months. So that disaggregation is happening in real time during the input forms. If it had been a live data, that disaggregation has to go all the way back to your BW or S4, wherever you are sourcing the data from, and that will have a lot of complications because it is at a month level, then it will be disaggregated at day level, then it will be stored, something will get hash value. So there's a lot of complication when disaggregation happens if the data is live. Second, data actions. When you create data actions, advanced formulas, it is happening on the account dimension. So when you load the data, your key figures become a structure in the account and only one measure is loaded. That is tailored towards planning. In actual data in BW or S4, it is not like that. Data is not stored in an account-based model where all your key figures is basically account members and you just have one measure. So that transformation happens in the planning model. That's why it is important and imperative that data is actually loaded in the right granularity, in the right account structure, so that the disaggregation can happen easily, the data actions can happen easily. If you make it live, then there will be too many complications for all these processes.
Got it, Devanshu. This is clear. So when you say disaggregation, is it VDT, value derivative? Because
No.
sometime back we okay.
No.
Like
disaggregation is basically in a form in the Excel. Suppose in an Excel sheet, it's just like an Excel sheet. The user has only two columns: company code and month and your measure. So they are entering the data. They are saying publish. The moment they say save and publish, it goes and sits back in the model. Now in the model, we have company code. We also have plant. So if you have entered 100,000, then where will it go? Which plant will it go? So what happens is it equally distributes it within all the plants under the company code. So the next level of granularity it will distribute. So that is called disaggregation.
That is basically automatic in planning.
Automatic in planning.
Okay,
exactly.
got it.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's very clear to me. Yep.
Yes, it's automatic. Now, if you have complex rules, like for example, you don't want to just disaggregate equally. You would say that if the plant has net revenue of 100, distribute 30%. If the plant has net revenue of 70, distribute 25% only. Don't equally distribute. Suppose you have this requirement. Then what will you do? Then your automatic disaggregation will not work. Then you have to create something called allocation. Okay? There is something called allocating the value. So you have to then create something called an allocation process in SAC planning and provide that rule that this is my source, this is my target, and this is my driver. The driver is your net revenue. So whichever plant has more net revenue will get more percentage of the value, which is disaggregated, and whichever plant has less revenue will get less value. So if you have complex rules, then the automatic doesn't work. Then you have to go for allocation process.
Yes, great. I understood clearly. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, guys. So I think we have spent a lot of time. I'm really sorry again for going way over, but I hope it was valuable to you. I hope you got some good insights. And next session, I am going to complete the HANA, native HANA side, the behavioral, and we'll have the final Q&A. Thank you very much for attending the session, and I hope you have the great rest of the day. Take care.